everyone who's deciding to watch this video. As I said in the last video, my name's Ben. I'm 25 and I am a book enthusiast. In the first video that I posted, I kind of went over my introduction to BookTube and how I was introduced to it, what made me decide to kind of participate in my own small way, and kind of what I had in mind for this channel. This video I'm going to be talking about my literary path through life. And I am going to warn you, while I've been kind of an avid reader from the beginning, I am also a creature of habit. I tend to find a series or an author and just read it to death. I'm also one of those people who can reread a book 5 or 6 times and still thoroughly enjoy it the 6th time. I always end up discovering stuff that I'd forgotten. It's just, like I said, I reread. So because of that, I've not read a huge diversity of books. I am purposely trying to change that right now, especially reading more classics. It's not something I read. But my first book that I ever read was Go Dog Go by Dr. Seuss. Still one of my most favorite books. After that, it was probably a lot of school reading. I was homeschooled, and my mom, reading was actually like a class for us, and she would buy these like textbooks that were basically collections of short stories, and we were supposed to read either a story or a certain number of chapters a day. I was the kid that, like, during the summer would find the reader for the next year and read the entire thing in a week. And I remember my mom getting very pissed off at me because I ruined her lesson plans by reading everything early. So after that, I would still do it, I just wouldn't tell her, and then I would reread them again when they were assigned. So that kind of held me for a couple of years. And then my mom, I don't know if she ever started, as long as I can remember, my mom would take us to the library like once a week. And the library was this amazing place. The town that I lived in didn't have a huge library, but still, it was a lot of books and all that. So I started reading the Hardy Boys series. Went through a lot of those, then discovered the Case File series. I picked up the first one kind of cautiously, because like I said, I don't typically try new things, especially as a young kid. I was probably like 12 or so, and I picked up the first Case File book, and someone died in it, and it immediately grabbed my attention, and I forsook the old Hardy Boys books and started, reading through the Case File books. Tore through those for a while, and then I had a good friend of mine give me one of the Redwall books, or let me borrow one of the Redwall books by Brian Jacques, and I kind of fell upon those, and that held me for a couple of years until probably I was 16 or so. And then I had other people, like family and friends and such, that recommended like Frank Peretti and Ted Dekker. I started reading through those books. I picked up a couple of others, but that's kind of what I stayed along. I picked up the Harry Potter books, probably almost all the way through the series. I think when I started reading them, the 6th one was waiting to be published. Read through those. I've read through the Hunger Games. I'm reading through Game of Thrones. I've actually haven't read it. I'm in the 2nd book, and I haven't read anything on that in about a year, so I need to pick it back up again. But that's kind of the extent. But like my more like popular trending series. I also discovered on my 16th birthday when my sister bought me Eragon and Eldest, the first 2 books in the Inheritance cycle by Christopher Paolini. Those are my absolute favorite books of all time. They're amazing. I think like there's 4 books in the series, and I have like 3 copies of Eragon. I have the paperback, which I got signed by him. I have a hardback, and then I have the 10th anniversary collector's edition, and then I have a paperback of Eldest and a hardback of Eldest, and you get the picture. Love those books. I also had a friend of mine that introduced me to the Star Wars universe, which are amazing, as you can kind of tell. I have some behind me. I've read a bunch of those. Like I said, I haven't read that many classics, actually. I'm trying to beef up that more. I've read, that was one drawback of being homeschooled and being a pretty avid reader. My mom never felt it was really necessary to enforce us reading books. So like the only books I had to read in school were Robinson Crusoe and Pilgrim's Progress. both of which I loved. But some of my classics are kind of limited. I have read through a lot of Rudyard Kipling stuff because he's definitely one of my favorite authors. I read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck several months ago. Absolutely loved it. I cannot wait to read more of his stuff. It was just brilliantly written. I've read Great Gatsby by Scott Fitzgerald. I don't see what all the hype is about. Just recently, I've read Dracula by Bram Stoker, and then I'm starting to read through the Sherlock Holmes books. So, sorry, I don't know why I couldn't remember that. I've read Study in Scarlet, Sign of the Four, and I'm reading through or listening through the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes right now. I'm also trying to expand myself in the actual like science fiction realm. Even though Star Wars is technically science fiction, it's kind of its own genre in my opinion. So I am, like I said, I'm trying to expand into that. I've read The Forever War by Joe Haldeman, which I really liked. I've read Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein, which I really liked. And yeah, so that's kind of a pretty brief synopsis of the books I've read in the first 22 years of my life, and a little bit more detailed explanation for what I've read in the past 3 years. Probably because what I've read in the past 3 years is a lot more broad of a sampling than I read in the first 22 years of my life. I'm trying this next year plus to read at least one classic a month, and I'm purposely like trying to pick different authors. I read Bram Stoker. I didn't really intend to read through all of the Sherlock Holmes, but I kind of decided I might as well. I'm also planning on picking up like one of the Bronte sisters and one of Jane Austen's. I'm trying to give myself a lot more like solid background in the classics. So I'll be, like I said, in the next year or so, next upcoming months, reading through those. I'm also reading through a science fiction series by C.S. Lewis. I finished the first book, Out of the Silent Planet, actually just last night, and it was really good. There's 2 more books. It's a trilogy, so I'm gonna be reading through those next 2, and they're not long either, so I should finish those up soon. And yeah, so that's what I read. That's what I'll be reviewing mostly whenever I get around to going through what I've finished. Like I said, that what I've read will probably be like a monthly wrap up thing, because that way at least I should have read through 2 or 3 books instead of if I do it weekly, I'll be like, oh yeah, I read 80 chapters in this one book and there's nothing to talk about. So hopefully it'll keep it a little bit more interesting. That is all for this video. Hope y'all have a great day. Hope y'all have a little bit better idea of what this channel is going to be like, and I will see y'all next time.